She handed him a sandwich like he didn't belong. He smiled, said nothing, and sent one text. By the time they landed, the entire crew had been erased from the system. Jordan Bennett was used to getting what he paid for, especially when that came with a 6-figure loyalty account and a seat stamped 1A on a transatlantic flight. But this wasn't about ego. It was about precision, about expectations met, about a reputation built on years of delivering results without excuses. Dominion Airways, the luxury airline he'd flown exclusively for over a decade, had always delivered, until today. The morning started, crisp, calculated. Jordan had arrived at JFK 2 hours before departure, as always. No delays, no rush, just smooth process. TSA pre-check cleared in 90 seconds. Personal concierge waiting at gate 73B. A glass of Dom Perignon served before he even stepped onto the aircraft. First class looked immaculate. Soft cream leather, polished mahogany paneling, a curated scent of citrus and oud designed to signal both wealth and calm. Everything was exactly how it should be. Almost. In Yosoton Yori, Jordan wore a navy blue suit from Brioni, a quiet $8,000 0-cent statement piece. His shoes? Hand-stitched Berluti loafers. His luggage? A custom black Tumi set with biometric locks. But nothing about him screamed, "Look at me." That wasn't his style. Jordan's real flex was knowledge. Knowing the entire flight manifest, who was on the board of Dominion's European partner, and how many days Dominion had left to accept or reject the $3,400,000,000 0-cent strategic merger offer his team had sent. He took his seat without fanfare. He wasn't the youngest in the cabin, nor the loudest. But he was, without question, the most powerful. And yet, as he glanced around, he could feel it. That subtle hum. The way the 2 execs in row 2 glanced at him, looked away. The way the flight crew's smiles faltered just half a beat when they saw a black man in seat 1A. No one said anything. But silence sometimes screams louder than words. He opened his tablet, stylus in hand, and tapped into the final draft of his Geneva presentation. Market strategies, merger clauses, executive payouts. Every detail mattered. Every hour on this flight was timed for prep. He'd even planned his meal. Lobster bisque, then filet mignon with truffle mash. He'd confirmed the order via the Dominion app. Twice. That meal wasn't just a luxury, it was a standard. His standard. The one every high-pay passenger was promised. As boarding completed, Jordan noticed her. Sharon Myers. Blonde bun. Name tag tilted. Her movements sharp. Her eyes cool. She offered menus to others with poise. But when she reached him, her steps slowed. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Here's your menu, sir," she said curtly, even though he wasn't supposed to need one. Jordan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He calmly reminded her, "I've pre-ordered." She blinked. "Right, one moment." She disappeared toward the galley, no acknowledgement, no reassurance, just vanished. He checked his phone. No notification from Dominion concierge. That was odd. 10 minutes passed. The cabin dimmed as flight attendants began the pre-takeoff sequence. Jordan put on his noise-canceling headphones and leaned back, one eye still on the aisle. Then she returned. No lobster, no filet, no explanation, just a single tray with a dry sandwich and a cup of water. "I'm afraid we're out of your selection, sir," she said, her tone flat. "You'll need to choose from the regular options." He stared at the tray, then at her. "That's not acceptable," he replied evenly. Her shrug was almost imperceptible. "It happens. Perhaps it didn't process in our system." She turned to leave. No apology, no attempt to make it right, just gone. And that's when it clicked. The reason, the tension, the way the other passengers had been served. Jordan scanned the room. Foie gras in row 2, Wagyu in row 3, champagne flowing like loyalty points in row 4. All white, all served, all acknowledged. He, on the other hand, was being told he didn't belong. Subtly, elegantly, discreetly. That's what made it worse. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue. Instead, he picked up his phone, typed one sentence, sent it to Daniel Wu. Then, he opened his tablet again, because when you're a man like Jordan Bennett, you don't get even, you get systemic. Jordan didn't move for a full minute. He sat there, expression unreadable, while the scent of seared foie gras drifted in from across the aisle. The sandwich in front of him looked like it had been pulled from a vending machine at a bus stop. Still, he didn't touch it. He looked up and scanned the cabin again. Not one member of the crew made eye contact. Not Sharon. Not the young man with the polished shoes serving row 2. Not the lead attendant who had greeted everyone else with a champagne pour and a smile. To them, he wasn't in seat 1A. He wasn't even there. He tapped his phone again. Daniel replied in under a minute. Daniel Wu, team's on it, running crew IDs, HR flags already popping up. Jordan slid the phone away and folded his hands on his lap. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a whisper, followed by silence. At that moment, 2 passengers behind him chuckled at something. One of them said, "Some folks don't know how this works," in a low drawl. Jordan didn't need to look to know they were talking about him. He could feel it, that laugh, the sideways glances, the whisper-laced pity. They weren't new. They were just dressed in first-class linen this time. He remembered a phrase his father used to say when he was a boy in Atlanta. "They'll never say it to your face, but they'll starve you with silence." That sandwich wasn't about food. It was a signal, a coded message, and he heard it loud and clear. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane reached cruising altitude. Jordan leaned back and closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to remember. One incident, 12 years ago. A different flight, a different airline. Same look, same treatment. Back then, he hadn't had the power to respond. He'd walked off that plane, humiliated, swearing that one day no one would ever treat him like that again. Today, that promise came due. He pressed the service button again. A different attendant arrived this time, Michael, younger, eager, maybe mid-20s. Jordan looked up. "Is Sharon available?" Michael hesitated. "She's attending to another guest, sir." "Interesting," Jordan replied, "because I saw her walk into the galley 5 minutes ago and she hasn't come back out." Michael looked uneasy. "Can I assist you instead?" Jordan's gaze held steady. "You can start by telling me why I'm the only passenger who didn't receive the meal they pre-ordered." Michael swallowed. I'm not sure, sir. It could be a system issue or what?" Jordan said, voice calm, eyes locked in. "Or a prioritization call? Who makes that decision? You, the lead?" Michael stammered. I don't think it's like that." Well, Jordan didn't blink. "Find out. You've got 10 minutes. Then I'll be sending a formal request for all onboard communication logs." Michael nodded, visibly shaken, and rushed off. Across the aisle, someone was watching. An older man in a crisp gray suit, mid-50s. Jordan noticed his gaze. The man nodded slightly. Whether it was sympathy, respect, or recognition, Jordan wasn't sure. But it didn't matter. He wasn't looking for allies. Back in the galley, Sharon leaned against the wall, arms crossed. She was laughing about something with Vincent Hale, the crew supervisor on board. The words, "He seriously asked for filet," and "entitled much," floated just loud enough for Michael to hear as he stepped in. He hesitated. They didn't see him. He turned and walked away. That night, Michael wouldn't sleep, because what he'd heard would later become evidence, attached to a confidential HR report, filed anonymously but triggered by a single, silent text message from seat 1A. Back in his seat, Jordan resumed work on his merger presentation. But his fingers weren't moving across the screen. They were tapping, slowly, rhythmically, against the leather armrest. Like a clock winding down toward a reset no one else saw coming. The plane cruised at 35,000 feet. The hum of the engines blended with low conversation, the clink of cutlery, and soft classical music. But at 1A there was still no meal. No apology. No acknowledgement. Jordan had entered what his team called zero mode, a state where emotion disappeared, replaced by surgical precision. He wasn't just reacting to disrespect. He was building a case, strategizing his retaliation. The kind that didn't just correct wrongs, but dismantled systems. Daniel message again. Daniel Wu. Sharon Myers, 6 internal complaints in 2 years, 3 flagged for racial bias, all quietly closed by her supervisor. Guess who? Vincent Hale. Jordan smiled, just slightly. Jordan. File it cross-check against Dominion Air's diversity compliance audits. Find me the oversight firm they report to. He looked up as Michael returned, looking pale. I spoke with the supervisor, he said softly. He said your order wasn't logged in the final printout, so they had to prioritize others. Jordan's eyebrow lifted. And how many of the others received meals without ordering at all? Michael hesitated. I don't know, sir. That's all right, Jordan replied, calm as ever. Because I do. He opened his tablet and turned the screen. A real-time dashboard blinked to life. Passenger manifest, dietary logs, preference history. He had access. Dominion Air was in early-stage talks with Bennett Capital. His team had back-end clearance. Michael's eyes widened as he saw it. Sharon had overridden his meal tag manually. An internal timestamp confirmed it. Jordan leaned forward slightly. You're not in trouble, Michael, but you are now part of a situation that has consequences. Michael swallowed and stepped back. 2 rows back, a woman in designer sunglasses whispered to her husband. The name Bennett had caught her attention. Within minutes, a quiet ripple of recognition passed through the cabin. A few passengers adjusted their posture. Someone whispered, "Is that the Jordan Bennett?" Suddenly, silence wasn't just awkward, it was tense. Vincent Hale stepped out of the galley, buttoning his blazer like a man preparing for damage control. He approached Jordan's seat with a polished smile. "Mr. Bennett," he began, "I understand there was a mix-up with your meal. Let me assure you we're looking into it and—" Jordan raised a hand. "Just one." And Vincent stopped mid-sentence. "You had your chance," Jordan said, voice like velvet-wrapped steel. "You chose to ignore internal warnings. You buried complaints. You let your staff weaponize hospitality against the wrong person." Vincent's jaw worked. "Sir, if there's any way I can—" Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced down. Daniel Wu, audit initiated, video pulled, statement ready for board review. HR director looped in. CEO has seen the alert. Jordan looked back at Vincent. "You should sit down and enjoy the rest of this flight. It might be your last one in uniform." Vincent's face turned a shade paler. He took a slow step back, nodded stiffly, and vanished toward the front cabin. It wasn't over. Not yet. But the shift had begun. Back in the operations center in New York, Daniel's team had triggered a red flag protocol. Dominion's CEO Eli Morgan was already reviewing the incident. A separate alert had gone to the Department of Labor's Office of Civil Rights, thanks to a clause Jordan's legal team had inserted into their earlier partnership agreement. Dominion had signed off, never imagining it would be used against them. Meanwhile, inside the plane, the mood had shifted entirely. The man in row 3 stood and approached Jordan discreetly. "Excuse me, Mr. Bennett," he said. I just wanted to say, I saw what happened. It wasn't right. I'm sorry." Jordan nodded politely but said nothing. The man returned to his seat, red-faced. The descent began. Cabin lights brightened. Flight crew resumed their cheery tones, but now there was a sharp edge to every word. They knew something had changed. They just didn't know how much. When the wheels touched down in Zurich, no one applauded. The silence was louder than any clapping could have been. As the plane taxied to the gate, Jordan stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and gathered his bag. 2 Dominion executives were waiting on the jet bridge. Jordan didn't stop to speak. He walked past them without a word, because the message had already been delivered. Behind him, Sharon tried to leave through the rear exit, but was intercepted by airport security and 2 Dominion HR officers. Vincent followed moments later, briefcase in hand, face flushed, flanked by 2 men in suits. By the time Jordan stepped into his waiting car, an internal email had gone out to all Dominion Air staff. Effective immediately, the crew of Flight FL-231 has been placed on administrative leave, pending formal investigation. But that wasn't the end. What the crew didn't know was that Jordan had looped in 2 journalists from the Wall Street Dispatch, contacts who had been looking into corporate discrimination cover-ups for months. A new headline would drop within hours. Luxury airline faces corporate shakeup after CEO exposes bias at 35,000 feet. The reckoning had landed. The next morning, Dominion Air's Zurich office was silent. Until it wasn't. An emergency board meeting had been called. Not by a director, not by the CEO, but by Jordan Bennett. Because what no one at Dominion realized was that this wasn't just a passenger complaint. This was a hostile accountability maneuver, executed from inside. You see, 2 weeks before boarding Flight FL-231, Jordan had quietly finalized a minority acquisition of Dominion stock through a shell trust managed by his firm. Enough to earn him a board seat. Enough to activate the whistleblower clause in their governance charter. Enough to legally override internal HR discretion on discrimination claims. So when the CEO tried to call Jordan directly, he got voicemail because Jordan was already in the executive conference room, sitting at the head of the table. When Eli Morgan, Dominion's CEO, walked in, his face dropped. "Jordan," he said tightly, "I wish you'd brought this to me directly." "I did," Jordan replied. 3 months ago. Your legal team dismissed it as a vendor misunderstanding. I decided to let you hear me. On your turf." A second later, 2 external auditors entered the room, retained by Bennett Capital. Behind them, the video footage from Flight FL-231 played on the 85-inch screen. Audio logs. Facial reactions. The moment Sharon rolled her eyes. The moment Vincent smirked as she handed Jordan that tray. "This," Jordan said, pointing at the screen, "isn't about a sandwich. It's about your culture." The room went cold. One board member tried to interrupt. "With all due respect, we—" Jordan turned. "Save it. You're not being sued. Not yet. You're being warned." A new slide appeared. Dominion's 2023 DEI report. Published. Sanitized. Worthless, Jordan said. "Your own numbers show that less than 3% of executive positions go to minorities. Meanwhile, 82% of discrimination complaints in the last 4 years were inconclusive. That's not—" The audit team passed folders around. Inside, redacted internal memos, whistleblower statements, anonymous testimonies, many from flight attendants and operations staff. It painted a picture far beyond Sharon or Vincent. This was systemic. Jordan stood up. "Here's how this goes," he said. "I'm not calling for firings. I'm calling for transformation. Effective immediately, Dominion Air will commit to a third-party ethics overhaul, a full-scale diversity audit, and mandatory frontline training for every crew member in the network. Or," he paused, letting the word hover, "I pull my investment, I go public, I file suit, and I let your competitors know exactly where to aim when they come for your brand." No one spoke. Jordan stepped toward the window. Zurich glimmered below, clean, precise, like the kind of world Dominion pretended to represent. "But if you do the right thing," he continued, "I'll stay. I'll help rebuild what you broke, not as a client, as a partner. One who won't let silence bury accountability again." Eli Morgan nodded, jaw tight. "We'll authorize the review. Full access, no red tape." Jordan didn't smile. He just nodded once, then left the room. But that wasn't the end. Hours later, a news alert hit every major finance channel. Dominion Air launches executive overhaul after boardroom power play by Jordan Bennett. And under it, a trending tag began to rise on Twitter. He said 1A. The hashtag exploded. Thousands shared stories. Some about corporate microaggressions. Others about how they'd once seen Jordan speak at a university, invest in black tech founders, or quietly pay off tuition for a student he barely knew. The footage from the flight was leaked. No one knew by whom. In it, Sharon's expression as she shrugged. Vincent's laughter in the galley and Jordan's calm face became a viral moment. Not rage, not revenge, but restraint, power, precision. Comment sections filled with a single phrase. "This is how you destroy a system, without raising your voice." In Zurich, Jordan walked into his hotel suite. Marcus was waiting with updates. Dominion's general counsel just agreed to the full audit. They're sending apology letters to every passenger who filed a complaint in the last 2 years. Sharon's been terminated. Vincent resigned. Jordan poured a glass of still water and sat. "Good," he said, "but we're not done." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You planning to buy them outright?" Jordan looked up. "No," he said. "I'm going to rebuild them from within. So the next black man in seat ton A never has to send a text. He just gets what he paid for and the respect that should have come with it." Outside, the sky was clear. Inside, the air finally felt clean. By the end of the week, everything had changed. Not just inside Dominion Air, but outside of it. Across boardrooms, break rooms, and terminals worldwide. Jordan didn't host a press conference. He didn't post on LinkedIn. He didn't need to. The story spoke for itself. One man, one seat, one moment of quiet disrespect turned into a corporate reckoning. But for Jordan, it wasn't about headlines. It was about impact. In the days following the incident, hundreds of letters poured into Bennett Capital's office. Some handwritten, some emailed, many anonymous. A letter from a young black pilot in training who wrote, "Thank you for showing them we belong at the front, not just of the plane, but the conversation." An email from a retired flight attendant who confessed, "I stayed silent too long. Watching what you did made me finally file my report." And one message, simple, powerful, from a janitor at an airport in Houston. You reminded them that dignity wears every color. Jordan read every one. He didn't reply to them all, but he carried them. Because this was never about vengeance. It was about breaking the cycle. Quietly, without fanfare, without fury. Just facts. Just truth. Just leverage. In a closed-door meeting a week later, Dominion's executive board approved Jordan's proposal for a new leadership fellowship, specifically for underrepresented crew and operations staff, fully funded, rolled out in 19 countries. Sharon's name wasn't mentioned. Neither was Vincent's. They were gone. Footnotes in a case study that would soon be taught in Harvard Business School's ethics class. But something else happened that no one saw coming. Dominion's customer satisfaction scores, after the scandal, skyrocketed. People didn't leave, they leaned in, they flew more. Why? Because change, when done right, doesn't just cleanse, it inspires. Passengers began posting selfies in Seat 1A with the hashtag Seat 1A, not out of vanity, but out of respect. It became a symbol not of privilege, but of accountability. The airline released a statement saying, "Every seat matters, every voice counts, and every guest deserves more than just a meal. They deserve dignity." That wasn't a PR line, that was Jordan's line, word for word. And though he didn't ask for credit, the world knew. At a private event months later, a Dominion flight attendant approached Jordan quietly. "I was on a different flight the day it happened," she said. "But I saw what you did, and now we all move differently." He smiled. "That's all I ever wanted." She hesitated, then added, "There's a young man. He joined 2 weeks ago. He's the first black lead on a flight crew in our region. He said you gave him that courage." Jordan nodded. Then it was worth it. As she walked away, Jordan turned to the window. A plane lifted off in the distance. Sleek, graceful, heading into sky. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like an outsider in a system he helped build. He felt like he'd finally reclaimed it. We all talk about justice like it's some grand thing, something decided in courtrooms, written in headlines, delivered by men in robes. But sometimes, justice shows up at 35,000 feet, in a seat no one saw coming. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't demand attention. It just waits, silently, until the moment is right. And then, it moves. Jordan Bennett didn't need to yell. He didn't throw a tantrum or post a video begging for sympathy. He didn't need to. Because real power doesn't ask to be seen. It simply acts, calmly, decisively, without apology. There's something deeply satisfying in knowing that respect can't be bought with miles or money. It's earned by how you treat the people who owe you nothing. And when you fail that test, Someone like Jordan might just be sitting in seat 1A, watching, waiting, listening. So here's the question. If that had been you, sitting there with the sandwich, the silence, and the system stacked against you, what would you have done? Would you have taken the tray, swallowed the insult, smiled through the sting? Or would you have done what Jordan did? Held the line, kept your voice steady, and let the weight of truth do the talking? Because in the end, this wasn't just a flight, it was a reckoning. A reminder that when people are dismissed, they remember. When they're underestimated, they rise. And when they're disrespected quietly, they often respond, just as quietly, but 10 times louder. So the next time you board a plane, serve a guest, or lead a team, ask yourself, who's in seat 1A today? And are you ready to treat them with the dignity they deserve, even if you don't recognize their power yet? Because you never know who's watching. And the system? It always remembers. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that power can be quiet and justice can be precise, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, comment on it, start a conversation. Because stories like this, they don't just go viral. They make change fly.